Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. That way, you'll always stay connected to our stories and never miss the next adventure. The ISS Harbinger looked impressive in the recruitment videos, all sleek lines and diplomatic polish, the kind of ship that said, "Humanity has arrived, and we're here to make friends." In reality, it was a retrofitted cargo hauler with delusions of grandeur, and Silas was pretty sure the air recyclers were held together with prayer and duct tape. He stood at the observation port, watching the Spiral Arm Coalition's neutral meeting station grow larger against the star field. The station was, well, calling it a station felt inadequate. It looked like someone had convinced a forest to grow in zero gravity, then wrapped it in what appeared to be prison-grade shielding. Organic curves merged with geometric brutalism in a way that made his head hurt if he looked at it too long. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Willa appeared beside him, practically vibrating with excitement. She had that look, the one she got right before doing something that would either win awards or require a medical evac. "It looks like a maximum security greenhouse," Silas muttered, which, knowing our luck, is probably exactly what it is. Willa grinned. She was holding 3 data pads, had 2 more tucked under her arm, and somehow still managed to look more put together than Silas felt. "You know what your problem is? No sense of wonder. We're about to dock with a structure built by 16 different species, each with completely different environmental needs." "My problem," Silas interrupted, "is that I've done this dance before. First contact protocols, cultural exchange, everyone smiling with too many teeth, or not enough teeth, or teeth in places teeth shouldn't be. And it always gets weird. That's why they sent you. You're good at weird." "I'm tired of weird, Willa. I'm 38 years old, and I just want one diplomatic mission that doesn't involve me accidentally insulting someone's ancestor spirit or discovering that handshakes are considered a mating ritual." The comms crackled to life, saving Willa from responding. "ISS Harbinger, you are cleared for docking at port—" There was a pause, some clicking sounds that might have been language or might have been someone dropping silverware. "Port Harmonious 17 under the singing moon." Silas and Willa exchanged looks. "They named their docking ports?" Silas asked the universe at large. "Apparently, poetically," Willa added. "The docking procedure took 20 minutes and involved the Harbinger rotating through angles that Silas was reasonably certain violated at least 3 laws of physics. When the airlock finally cycled open, they were greeted by air that tasted faintly of ozone and something floral that made Silas's sinuses immediately regret every decision that led to this moment. The docking corridor was enormous, big enough to accommodate species that definitely weren't human-sized. The walls were some kind of living material, pale green and gently luminescent, with what looked like veins of silver running through them. Silas tried not to think about whether they were actually veins. "Ambassador Silas, Scientist Willa." The voice came from ahead, accompanied by the sound of multiple limbs on metal grating. Their liaison appeared around the curve of the corridor, and Silas had to force himself not to stare. He'd seen plenty of aliens in his career, but Nothiali was striking even by those standards, easily 3 meters tall, with a segmented body covered in a carapace that shifted colors like oil on water. 6 legs carried them forward with unsettling grace, while 4 upper limbs gestured in what the translation software assured Silas was a welcoming manner. "Welcome! Welcome!" The colors on Nothali's carapace rippled from deep blue to warm amber. "Your journey was pleasant, yes? No catastrophic decompression? No unexpected wormhole detours?" Both disappointingly absent, Silas said, extending his hand and then immediately wondering if that was appropriate. The cultural briefing had been vague. Nothali's carapace flickered with what might have been amusement, purple with gold streaks, and carefully touched one delicate limb tip to Silas's palm. Excellent. Humor. This is good. You will need humor, I think. That was never a good sign. Need humor for what, exactly? Willa asked, her excitement dimming slightly into scientific caution. Ah, yes, about that. Nothali's colors shifted to something that looked uncomfortably like nervousness, pale yellow with jagged orange stripes. There has been a small change to the proceedings, very small, barely worth mentioning. Insignificant, really. Silas felt his diplomatic smile crystallizing into something more like a grimace. Noth Ali. What changed? The location. Simply the location. Instead of meeting at the council chambers, we will be meeting at the private residence of Councillor Imara. She insisted, quite strongly. The council agreed it would be educational. Imara, Silas repeated slowly. Human name? Oh, yes. You did not know. Nothali's carapace flashed with genuine surprise. Bright cyan. Councillor Imara has been with the coalition for 20 years. She is highly respected, somewhat feared, definitely feared. She has done remarkable things. Also, terrifying things. The line between remarkable and terrifying is quite thin with Councillor Imara. Willa was already pulling up files on her datapad, scrolling rapidly. Wait. Imara. She was part of the Maelstrom Initiative, first human deep space contact team. They went dark for 3 years. Everyone assumed the mission was lost. And then, she emerged from the Bastion system with a peace treaty, 3 species worth of cultural exchange data, and a ship full of apex predators she'd somehow befriended, Silas finished, the memories clicking into place. They said she went native. The diplomatic corps wrote entire papers about her as a cautionary tale. The diplomatic corps, Noth Ali said, delicately, does not understand Councillor Imara. But the council does. This is why your final negotiations will be with her. If she approves of humanity's entry into the coalition, the vote is merely a formality. And if she doesn't approve? Silas asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted the answer. Nothali's carapace went completely gray. Then humanity will wait another generation. At minimum, possibly longer. Councillor Imara's judgment is valued. Fantastic. No pressure at all. They followed Nothali through corridors that seemed to shift in purpose as they walked. One moment, they were passing what looked like administrative offices, aliens of various configurations, bent over terminals that ranged from recognizable to utterly baffling. The next, they were walking through what appeared to be a market, with vendors selling items that Silas's brain refused to categorize as either food, tools, or abstract art. Question, Willa said, keeping pace despite having to take 2 steps for every one of Nothali's strides. Why the home visit? That's unusual for diplomatic proceedings, isn't it? Councillor Imara believes that formal settings encourage formal lies, Nothali replied. She prefers to meet beings in her space where they cannot hide behind protocol. She says she sees truth better when people are uncomfortable. Charming, Silas muttered. She is not trying to be charming, Ambassador. She is trying to determine if humanity is ready for coalition membership. This requires honesty, not charm. They took a lift that moved sideways as often as it moved up, passing through sections of the station that looked increasingly organic. By the time they emerged, Silas felt like they'd descended into the station's root system rather than ascended to residential quarters. Here we are, Noth Ali announced as they approached a massive doorway. It was reinforced. Silas could see the blast shielding built into the frame, but decorated with carved reliefs of creatures from a dozen worlds. All predators, he noticed, all shown in poses of hunting, fighting, or feeding. Those are cheerful, he said. Counselor Imara appreciates predators, Nothali said, as if this explained everything. She understands them. Perhaps better than she understands diplomats. The door opened before Nothali could activate any kind of entry system. On the other side stood a woman who looked like she'd been carved from teak wood and tempered in solar wind. She was maybe 50, maybe 60, hard to tell with the kind of life that wrote itself across someone's face in scars and laugh lines. She wore practical clothing that had seen real use, and her gray-streaked hair was pulled back in a style that said, "I don't have time for nonsense." Her eyes, though, her eyes were sharp enough to cut. "You must be Silas," she said, and her voice carried the kind of authority that came from making adult ash-growlers sit down and stay. "And Willa. Good. I was told you were both competent, but I've learned to distrust reports. Come in. We have a lot to discuss, and the cubs are getting impatient." "Cubs?" Silas mouthed at Willa. She shrugged, which was not reassuring. They entered what could generously be called a residential space, and more accurately be called a wildlife sanctuary, with delusions of domesticity. The main area was enormous, with walls that transitioned from solid structure to reinforced transparent steel, revealing a garden that shouldn't have been possible in a space station. Trees grew at impossible angles, water flowed in spirals that defied gravity, and through it all, Silas could see movement. Creatures lounging, prowling, watching. "Welcome to my home," Imara said, gesturing broadly. "Don't touch anything that has teeth, claws, or spines, which, admittedly, is most things." "Tea?" Yes?" Silas managed. "Excellent. Notheli, you can stop hovering in the doorway. I'm not going to bite them." "Probably." Imara moved toward what appeared to be a kitchen area, stepping around a creature that looked like a cross between a cat and a small bear. It opened one eye, assessed the newcomers, and went back to sleep. "That's a Denali prowler," Willa whispered, her datapad already out and scanning. "They're classified as extremely dangerous. Their toxin can paralyze a human in seconds." "His name is Benjamin," Imara called from the kitchen, apparently possessing superhuman hearing. "And he only uses his toxin on people he doesn't like. So be likable." Silas was beginning to understand why the diplomatic corps had written those cautionary papers. Imara returned with tea. Actual Earth tea, which was somehow more surprising than the deadly fauna, and gestured for them to sit. The furniture was human standard, which was a relief until Silas realized it was positioned to offer a clear view of the garden beyond the transparent steel. "So," Imara said, settling into her chair with the ease of someone completely comfortable in a space that would give most people nightmares, "let's discuss why you're really here. And don't give me the official line about cultural exchange and mutual cooperation. I want to know what humanity actually wants from coalition membership." Silas opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. His carefully prepared speech evaporated like water on a hot plate. "Honestly," he finally said, "we're lonely and scared. We've been alone out here for so long, and now we know we're not, and we're trying really hard not to screw it up by either being too aggressive or too weak or too weird. We want allies. We want trading partners. We want to know that if something comes out of the dark that's bigger and scarier than us, we won't be facing it alone." Imara's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes softened slightly. "Better. That's honest. The Council has heard 46 species give 46 versions of 'we come in peace' over the centuries. None of them admitted to being scared. Nathali, thoughts? The mantis-like alien's carapace flickered thoughtful silver. Honesty is promising. Fear is universal. This is good beginning. Willa, Imara continued, why are you here? And I know you're not just a xenobiologist. Your file says you've turned down 3 university positions to keep doing fieldwork. Why? Willa didn't hesitate. Because sitting in a lab looking at dead samples is boring, and I'd rather be out here looking at living ones, even if they might eat me. Especially if they might eat me. Imara actually smiled at that. Now that's a human answer if I ever heard one. Come on, I want to show you something before we get into the boring political necessities. It's feeding time. She stood and headed toward a doorway that led deeper into the garden space. Silas and Willa exchanged glances, the kind of glance that said, "This is definitely a terrible idea. And also, we're absolutely going to do it anyway." They followed Imara through corridors of growing things, past enclosures where various creatures watched them with varying degrees of interest or hunger. Nathali brought up the rear, their carapace cycling through colors too rapidly for Silas to interpret. 3 years ago, Imara said as they walked, I was on Bastion 3. Beautiful world. Terrible place to visit. The apex predator there is called an ash growler. Imagine if someone took a wolverine, a dragon, and nightmares, then bred them for maximum lethality. I've seen the files, Willa said, keeping pace. Adults can grow to 3 meters at the shoulder, bite force sufficient to crack shuttle plating. Pack hunters with limited telepathic coordination. They're considered impossible to domesticate. Exactly, Imara agreed, which is why when my research team encountered a pack, standard coalition protocol was to neutralize the threat and move on. But the adults were protecting something. Cubs. 3 of them. Maybe 6 months old. And after the adults were dealt with, I couldn't just leave them. They emerged into a larger garden area, this one with reinforced walls and what looked like blast doors at regular intervals. Emergency exits, Silas realized. This was the dangerous section. So I kept them, Imara continued, raised them, learned their language. Because yes, they have one. It's just not verbal. And I learned something important about humanity in the process. She stopped at a gate that led into a subsection of the garden. Beyond it, Silas could see movement in the shadows beneath some kind of purple-leaved tree analog. We're the only species in the known galaxy, Imara said quietly, that actively befriends apex predators. Other species fear them or become them. We do both and neither. We see something with fangs and claws and killing instinct, and part of us says that would make a good friend. It's insane. It's also who we are. She opened the gate. Meet the cubs. They came out of the shadows like liquid darkness given form, and Silas understood immediately why they were called ash growlers. Their scales were the color of cooling magma, black with veins of deep red that seemed to glow from within. 6 legs moved with perfect coordination, each ending in paws that concealed retractable claws longer than Silas's fingers. They were maybe the size of large dogs, but there was nothing canine about them. Their heads were broad and flat, with eyes that burned amber in the garden's filtered light. And when they opened their mouths, displaying rows of teeth designed for one purpose only, Silas could see why something 3 times their size could crack shuttle plating. All 3 cubs fixed their attention on him. Silas froze. Every instinct he possessed screamed at him to run, to back away, to get something solid between himself and the creatures currently closing the distance with deliberate, measured steps. His hand wanted to reach for the sidearm he wasn't carrying. His legs wanted to carry him anywhere else. His brain wanted to file formal complaints with every department that had approved this meeting. He did none of those things. He stood perfectly still, maintaining eye contact with the lead cub, hardly daring to breathe. The three ash growlers stopped perhaps 2 meters away. They tilted their heads in perfect unison, studying him with an intelligence that was definitely not human, but just as definitely present. Then, as one, they opened their mouths and the sound that emerged would haunt Silas's nightmares for weeks. It wasn't quite a growl, wasn't quite a roar. It resonated in frequencies that made his bones ache and his teeth hurt. It said, in a language older than words, "I am a predator. You are prey. And this is how the universe works." All three cubs snarled at him, and Silas was absolutely certain he was about to die in the stupidest possible way. Then Imara laughed. Actually laughed, bright and genuine. "That means they like you." Silas blinked. His heart was attempting to exit through his ribcage. His palms were sweating, and every nerve ending was screaming conflicting orders. And Imara was laughing. "I'm sorry," he managed, his voice higher than he'd like to admit. "Did you just say they like me?" "Absolutely." Imara walked past him while 3 apex predators were still staring with those burning amber eyes, and knelt down. The cubs immediately mobbed her, making chirping sounds that seemed physically impossible given their throat structure. They rubbed against her like oversized, terrifying house cats. Willa had her scanner out, naturally, because mortal peril had never stopped her from gathering data. Fascinating. The snarl. It's a social bonding behavior? That contradicts everything in the literature. "The literature," Imara said, scratching one cub behind what might have been ears, "was written by species that don't befriend predators. They see aggression. They record aggression. But watch." She stood up and took a step back. The cubs turned their attention back to Silas, who was still frozen in place like a particularly anxious statue. "They snarled at you because you're new and interesting," Imara explained. "It's a test. Most species run when an ash growler snarls at them, which is smart, honestly. Some species attack preemptively, also smart, from their perspective. But you froze. You held eye contact. You respected their space while standing your ground. That's the response of a potential pack member." "I wasn't being brave," Silas said through clenched teeth. "I was literally too scared to move." "Doesn't matter. The result is what counts." Imara gestured to the cubs. "Go ahead. Let them smell you. They won't bite unless you do something stupid. And before you ask, stupid things include sudden movements, high-pitched noises, showing your teeth, or trying to pet them without permission." "That's a lot of ways to die accidentally," Silas observed. "Welcome to xenobiology," Willa said cheerfully, already extending her hand toward the nearest cub. It sniffed her carefully, those massive nostrils flaring, then made a rumbling sound that might have been approval or might have been digestive distress. Hard to tell. Silas slowly, very slowly, extended his own hand. The lead cub, the one that had initiated the snarling, approached with deliberate steps. Its breath was hot and smelled like something between ozone and copper. Those amber eyes never left his face. Then it pressed its scaled head against his palm, and Silas discovered that ash growler cubs were surprisingly warm. The scales felt like smooth stone that had been sitting in sunlight. "Good," Imara said softly. "That's Diesel. Yes, I named him. Don't judge me. The other two are Bishop and Hannibal. I have a theme." Violent historical figures and fuel sources? Willa asked, now crouched down and apparently conducting a full examination of Bishop, who was tolerating this with remarkable patience. Things that are dangerous but useful, Imara corrected. Come on, let's get them fed, and I'll explain why you're actually here. Feeding time involved slabs of something purple that Imara retrieved from a refrigeration unit, which the cubs tore into with enthusiasm and disturbing efficiency. While they ate, the humans settled onto benches that gave them a clear view of the garden. The Coalition, Imara began, has been watching humanity for 2 decades, ever since we made first contact, and they're confused by us. Confused how? Silas asked. He was still watching Diesel, who was watching him back between bites. We don't fit their models. Most species fall into clear categories: predator species, prey species, symbiotic species, hive species. But humans, we're persistence hunters who farm. We're pack animals who value individuality. We're aggressive when threatened, but form alliances with former enemies. We're walking contradictions. Nothali's carapace flickered thoughtful silver. The council debates endlessly about human nature. Are you dangerous? Are you trustworthy? Can you be predicted? These questions have no consensus answers. And the cubs? Willa asked, though Silas suspected she already knew. The cubs are a test, Imara said simply. Not an official one, mind you, but the council knows I have them. They know you're meeting them. They're watching to see how you react to apex predators, because that tells them something about human nature that all the diplomatic reports can't. You ran, Silas said slowly, understanding dawning, when the Coalition would have fought or negotiated. I didn't run. I adapted. I saw something dangerous and thought, how do I make this work? That's the human approach. Imara leaned back, her eyes on the cubs. Other species see a threat and eliminate it or flee from it. We see a threat and ask, can I befriend this? Can I use this? Can I turn this into something beneficial? It's insane, Nothali offered, but their carapace showed colors that suggested admiration. It's survival, Imara countered. Our ancestors looked at wolves, actual wolves, not the cute dogs we have now, and said, you know what? Partnership. We did it with horses, with cats, with birds of prey. We have a genetic compulsion to befriend things that could kill us. Diesel finished eating and padded over to Silas, leaving purple blood stains in his wake. He sat down heavily on Silas's feet, which was either affection or a dominance display. Possibly both. So, Silas said, looking down at the creature pinning his feet, you're saying the Coalition is judging humanity based on how we interact with your murder puppies? I'm saying, Imara replied with a slight smile, that actions speak louder than diplomatic statements. And right now, you're letting a juvenile apex predator use you as furniture instead of screaming for security. That says something about humans that the council needs to understand. Willa was taking notes, because, of course, she was. This is brilliant, unconventional, possibly unethical, definitely outside standard diplomatic protocols, but brilliant. The universe doesn't care about protocols, Imara said. It cares about what you do when the protocols fail. Which brings me to why we're really having this conversation here, in my garden, surrounded by predators. She stood up, and something in her expression shifted, became more serious. Because in about 30 minutes, something is going to go very, very wrong. And how you respond will determine whether humanity joins the Coalition or waits another generation. Alarms began to wail before Silas could ask what she meant. The alarms weren't the polite, attention-getting kind. These were the evacuate immediately or accept your fate variety. Harsh, pulsing klaxons that made Silas's teeth ache. The cubs reacted instantly, dropping into defensive crouches, their scales darkening to pure black. "What's happening?" Willa demanded, already on her feet. Imara was moving toward a priority console built into the garden wall, her expression grim but not surprised. Not surprised at all, Silas noticed. "The mother," she said simply. "She's out." "The mother," Silas repeated, as in the cub's mother. "The adult ash-growler." "The same." Imara's fingers flew across the console, pulling up security feeds. "She's been in a specialized containment area in the lower residential sectors. Medical observation. She was injured when I found the cubs. Been healing for 3 years, almost ready for release back to Bastion the 3. You're keeping an adult ash growler on a space station?" Silas's voice might have cracked slightly. "And nobody thought to mention this?" "I mentioned it," Nothali said, their carapace flashing anxious yellow. "In Report 38, subsection 12, footnote 6. Now is not the time," Imara interrupted. On the screens, Silas could see something massive moving through corridors that suddenly looked far too narrow. The mother ash-growler was twice the size of the cubs, all coiled muscle and armored plating. She moved with terrifying purpose. "How did she get out?" Willa asked, moving to look at the screens. "That," Imara said quietly, "is an excellent question. Her containment has 6 redundant systems. For all of them to fail simultaneously? That doesn't happen by accident." "You're saying someone let her out," Silas said, his diplomatic training finally kicking in past the terror. "This is the test. You said something would go wrong." Imara met his eyes. "I said something would happen. I didn't say I orchestrated it. But yes, the Council wanted to see how humans respond when the carefully controlled situation becomes uncontrolled. When people are in danger. When there's no script to follow." The mother ash-growler was heading toward a populated transit hub, according to the tracking data. Dozens of civilians, multiple species, all trapped in a space with limited exits because the emergency lockdown had sealed most of the blast doors. "Security response time?" Imara asked Nothali. 12 minutes for containment team deployment. 20 for specialized equipment. The transit hub will be..." Nothali's carapace went gray. "Many casualties. Standard protocol is evacuation of surrounding sectors and lethal force authorization." "So we have 12 minutes before they kill her," Willa said. "We have less than that before she kills someone," Imara corrected. "She's confused, stressed, in an unfamiliar environment. She's not hunting. She's searching. But if she feels cornered, or if someone panics and attacks her, she'll defend herself. And against an adult ash-growler, defense means lethal force." The cubs were pacing now, making distressed sounds. They could smell their mother, Silas realized, or sense her somehow. They wanted to go to her. "There's another option," Imara said slowly. She was looking at the cubs, calculation visible on her face. "The mother isn't aggressive toward her offspring. If we can get the cubs to her before security arrives, they might calm her enough for us to activate the tranquilizer field." "The tranquilizer field that didn't keep her contained in the first place?" Silas pointed out. "Different system. Portable units. They're positioned throughout the station for exactly this kind of situation." Imara pulled up a schematic. "If we can get her to this junction point, we can activate a field strong enough to drop her safely." "And how do we get her there?" Willa asked. Imara looked at them both. "We lead her. The cubs go first. We follow with the portable units. She sees her offspring, she follows. We activate the field. She goes down peacefully. Everyone lives. That's insane, Silas said. Yes. She could kill all of us. Also, yes. There are dozens of civilians in danger. Actual, immediate danger. Which is why we need to move now. Imara was already gathering equipment. Portable units that looked like oversized flashlights, comm devices, what appeared to be body armor that had seen better days. She tossed a set to each of them. The Council is watching this. Security forces are watching this. Every species represented on this station is watching to see what the humans do. Silas caught the armor, felt its weight, looked at Willa, who was already fastening hers on with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Looked at Nothali, whose carapace was cycling through colors so rapidly it was basically a strobe light of anxiety. This is the test, he said quietly. The real one. Not how we react to the cubs, how we react to this. Every species has protocols for this scenario, Imara said, checking the portable tranquilizer units. The Vinthax Collective would evacuate and use orbital strikes to eliminate the threat. The Shoal Alliance would sacrifice the transit hub population to save the rest of the station. The Daxon hierarchy would negotiate, which would work great if the mothers spoke their language. But humans? She looked up, and there was something fierce in her expression. Humans try the insane option, the one that might save everyone, the one that says, there has to be another way, even when it's dangerous, even when it's stupid, especially when everyone else says it's impossible. Diesel was pressing against Silas's leg, looking up at him with those burning amber eyes. The cub was trembling, actually trembling, with the need to get to his mother. Bishop and Hannibal were at the gate, pawing at it, making sounds that were definitely distress calls. Silas thought about protocols, about the safe option, which was letting security handle it, about the smart option, which was staying right here in the reinforced garden where nothing could get to them, about all the very reasonable arguments for not doing what Imara was suggesting. Then he thought about the civilians in the transit hub, the ones who'd come to this station believing it was safe, the ones who were about to die because someone had decided to test humanity's character by releasing an apex predator into a populated area. All right, he said, let's go save everyone and probably die doing it. That seems appropriately human. Willa actually grinned. Now you're getting it. Nothali made a sound that the translator rendered as a sigh of resignation. I will coordinate with security. Delay their response by claiming equipment malfunction. This gives you, perhaps, 8 minutes. 8 minutes to move a 3-meter apex predator through a space station using 3 juveniles and hope she doesn't decide we're threats. Silas was already moving toward the gate, because apparently his body had accepted this insanity before his brain had caught up. What could possibly go wrong? So many things, Imara said cheerfully, opening the gate. The cubs shot through immediately, heading for the corridor access. Try to keep up, and whatever you do, don't run. Running triggers prey drive, and you really don't want to trigger prey drive. They followed Imara into the corridor, 3 humans chasing 3 juvenile predators through a space station to intercept their mother before security killed her, or she killed someone else. The cubs moved with purpose now, following some instinct or scent that led them unerringly toward the transit hub, toward the mother, toward what might be the worst diplomatic incident in human history, or the moment humanity proved they belonged in the coalition. Silas was really hoping for the second one, though he'd settle for just surviving the next 8 minutes. The cubs turned a corner ahead, their claws scraping on the metal grating. Somewhere in the distance, something roared. a sound that made the ash-growler cubs' snarls seem like polite whispers. The mother knew they were coming, and she was angry. The transit hub was a cathedral of panic when they arrived, beings of half a dozen species pressed against the far walls, as far from the central platform as they could get. Some were chittering in languages the translator couldn't keep up with. Others had gone completely silent, frozen in that universal prey response that transcended biology. In the center of it all, the mother ash-growler paced. She was magnificent and absolutely horrifying. Where the cubs were the size of large dogs, she was the size of a cargo shuttle. Her scales were darker than theirs, nearly black, with scars that told stories of survival on a world where everything wanted you dead. Her eyes burned with the same amber light as her offspring. But there was no playfulness in them, only confusion, stress, and the coiled potential for violence. She hadn't attacked anyone yet. That was something. But she was between the civilians and the primary exit, and her body language screamed territoriality. She'd claimed this space, and she wasn't leaving. 8 minutes just became 6, Willa whispered, checking her comm unit. Security override in progress. They're not waiting for Nothali's clearance. Then we'd better work fast. Imara positioned the portable tranquilizer units at the junction point they'd passed, the spot where, if everything went perfectly, the mother would be when they activated the field. If everything went perfectly, which, in Silas's experience, it absolutely wouldn't. The cubs had stopped at the entrance to the transit hub, their earlier eagerness replaced by caution. They could see their mother, could probably smell her agitation. Diesel whined, a sound that seemed impossible from a creature designed for intimidation. She doesn't recognize them, Willa said, her scanner active despite the situation. Look at her pupils, dilated, stress response. She's been in isolation for 3 years while they grew. To her, they're strangers. Fantastic, Silas muttered. So the plan is to introduce 3 strangers to an agitated apex predator and hope maternal instinct kicks in before murder instinct does? You're really grasping the fundamentals of xenobiology, Willa said, and she actually sounded impressed. The mother's head swung toward them, nostrils flaring. She'd caught their scent. Her lips pulled back, revealing teeth that could absolutely tear through the body armor they were wearing like it was decorative tissue paper. Stay calm, Imara said quietly. Project Confidence. Predators smell fear, and right now, fear is the wrong message. Project Confidence. Sure. Silas was currently confident he was about to die in a spectacularly stupid way, so at least he had that going for him. Imara stepped forward, moving with deliberate slowness. She kept her hands visible, her posture non-threatening but not submissive. The mother tracked her movement, a low rumble building in her chest that Silas felt in his bones. Then Imara did something that made Silas's heart stop. She knelt down. Just knelt there, in the open, making herself smaller, vulnerable. Every instinct Silas possessed screamed that this was wrong, that you didn't make yourself prey-sized in front of an apex predator. But Imara did it with the same calm confidence she'd shown with the cubs. The mother took a step forward. Then another. She was close enough now that Silas could see the individual plates of her armor-like scales, could smell the copper and ozone scent that seemed to be universal to ash-growlers. Close enough to kill Imara in one motion. The cubs, seeing their mother approach, rushed forward. Not attacking. Greeting. They made those chirping sounds again, the ones that seemed physically impossible, and swarmed around the mother's legs. The mother froze, her massive head lowered, sniffing at the cubs. Recognition flickered across her face, if a creature with that physiology could be said to have expressions, and the rumbling changed pitch, became something softer. She remembers, Willa breathed. Not them specifically, but the scent, the bond. Bishop was rubbing against the mother's foreleg, leaving scent markers. Hannibal was making what could only be described as pleading sounds, and Diesel, brave, stupid Diesel, had planted himself between the mother and Imara, as if protecting the human from his own parent. The mother's attention shifted to Imara. Then, slowly, deliberately, she lowered her head and pressed her snout against the kneeling woman's shoulder. It wasn't gentle. There was enough force behind it to knock Imara back slightly, but it wasn't aggressive either. It was investigative, curious. "Good girl," Imara said softly, and Silas wanted to point out that "good girl" seemed wildly insufficient for a creature that could bite through starship plating, but he was too busy remembering how to breathe. The mother pulled back, looked at Imara, then at the cubs. She made a questioning sound. Somehow, despite having no frame of reference for ash growler communication, Silas understood it was a question. "Where have you been? Who is this? What happened?" "We need to move her," Imara said, not moving herself. "The tranquilizer junction is behind us. We need her to follow voluntarily. Silas, Willa, I need you to back up slowly. Give her a path. Let her think she's hurting you." "Hurting us," Silas repeated. "Prey behavior, non-threatening. It gives her a sense of control." Imara was still locked in that strange communion with the mother, maintaining eye contact without challenging. "Trust me." Trusting Imara had worked so far, in the sense that none of them were dead yet. Silas began backing up, keeping his movements smooth and predictable. Willa did the same, though she kept her scanner active, because apparently imminent death wasn't sufficient reason to stop gathering data. The mother watched them retreat. Her posture shifted, less defensive, more interested. The cubs were still swarming around her, providing social proof that these humans were acceptable, pack-adjacent, not threats. Slowly, ponderously, the mother began to move forward, following them. It was working. They were actually herding an apex predator through a space station by pretending to be prey, and it was working. Then someone screamed. One of the civilians, Silas couldn't see which species, panicked, made a break for the exit, running full speed past the slow-moving procession of humans and ash growlers. The mother's head snapped toward the movement. "Prey drive," Silas's brain supplied helpfully. "Running triggers, prey drive." The mother lunged. "No!" Imara shouted, and something in her voice cut through even predator instinct. The mother checked her lunge, confusion warring with instinct, buying them maybe 3 seconds. Silas didn't think. Thinking was what got you killed. Instead, he stepped directly into the mother's line of sight, between her and the running civilian, and did the only thing he could think of. He froze, held eye contact, stood his ground. The mother's momentum carried her forward until she was close enough that her breath stirred his hair, close enough that he could see his own terrified reflection in those amber eyes, close enough to die. She snarled, not the greeting sound the cubs had made, but something deeper, more primal, a sound that said, "Apex predator, and don't forget it." Silas didn't move, couldn't move. Every muscle locked in place by some combination of terror and stubborn human stupidity. The mother's snarl tapered off into something questioning. She tilted her head, the same gesture the cubs had made in Imara's garden. Testing. Evaluating. Then Diesel was there, pressing between them, making his own snarling sounds at his mother. Not aggressive, insistent, protective. "This one is pack. This one is ours. The mother looked at her cub, looked at Silas, made a sound that might have been frustration, or might have been amusement, or might have been something that didn't translate to human concepts at all. Then she turned away from the fleeing civilian and continued her slow walk down the corridor, cubs trailing beside her. Silas's legs remembered how to work, barely. He fell into step behind the procession, his hands shaking, his heart trying to escape through his ears. That, Willa said quietly, was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen. Bit of both, Silas managed. They reached the junction point. The mother was in position, surrounded by her cubs, calm enough now that the immediate threat had passed. Imara activated the tranquilizer field. The effect was gradual. Ash growlers were too large for instant sedation, but within 30 seconds, the mother was settling to the floor, her breathing deep and even. The cubs curled up beside her, clearly exhausted by the stress. Diesel kept one eye open, watching Silas, until sleep finally claimed him too. Security arrived 90 seconds later, weapons drawn, ready for a crisis. They found 3 humans sitting on the floor near 4 sleeping ash growlers, all of them too tired to do anything but wave weakly. Nothali's carapace was a riot of colors when they arrived. Relief, awe, confusion, and about 6 emotions that didn't translate. You did it. You actually did it. The council has no words. Join the club, Silas said. They reconvened in Imara's garden 6 hours later, after medical checks and debriefings and about 40 different species of bureaucratic nonsense. The cubs were back in their enclosure. The mother was in upgraded containment with better monitoring, and Silas was drinking something that Imara promised was alcoholic enough to help with the trauma. The council has voted, Nothali announced. Humanity is accepted into the coalition. The vote was unanimous. Unanimous? Willa asked. That's unprecedented, isn't it? 46 species have joined the coalition in its history, Nothali said. None have received unanimous approval. But then, none of them have demonstrated what you demonstrated today. What did we demonstrate? Silas asked. Besides a questionable survival instinct? Choice, Imara said quietly. When the protocols failed, when the safe option was available, you chose the option that might save everyone, even the predator. That's what makes humans different. You see danger and ask how to make it work, rather than how to eliminate it. We're insane, Silas said. Exactly, Imara agreed. And the galaxy needs that kind of insane. Because the universe is full of problems that can't be solved by following protocols or choosing safe options. Sometimes you need someone crazy enough to stand between an apex predator and a civilian, because it just might, work. The cubs were approaching the transparisteel, watching them. Diesel pressed his snout against the barrier, those amber eyes fixed on Silas. He's asking if you'll come back, Imara said. They do that. Form attachments to pack members, even temporary ones. Silas looked at the cub, at the creature that could kill him without effort, but had instead chosen to protect him. At the physical embodiment of humanity's weird relationship with danger. Yeah, he said. Yeah, I'll come back. Someone needs to make sure you're not getting yourself killed by befriending something even more dangerous. Imara smiled. Too late. I've already got my eye on a void serpent from the Abyss sector. They're only hostile 90% of the time. Only 90%, Silas repeated. Great. Fantastic. I'm going to need more alcohol. But he was smiling too, because this weird, dangerous universe had just become his responsibility. Humanity's responsibility. And if there was one thing humans were good at, it was taking impossible situations and finding the option nobody else would even consider, even if that option involved befriending the predators, especially if it involved befriending the predators. The cubs snarled at him through the transperistyle, that greeting, pack-bonding snarl that had started this whole mess. Silas snarled back. It wasn't a good snarl. Humans weren't built for it. But the cubs seemed to appreciate the effort. They bounced around their enclosure, making those impossible chirping sounds, and somewhere in his chest, Silas felt something warm and ridiculous that might have been hope. The galaxy was vast and strange, and full of things that wanted to kill you. But it was also full of possibilities, and humanity had just been invited to explore all of them.